Under the bright skies of Sharm el-Sheikh, the flags of nations rise once again, symbols of fragile hope in a region scarred by 2 relentless years of war. Egypt, long the mediator of Middle Eastern conflicts, now prepares to host another critical summit. The world's attention turns to this Red Sea resort city, where leaders will attempt to transform a temporary truce into a sustainable peace. The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, brokered after months of secret negotiations, has stopped the guns, at least for now. But in the words of diplomats, the silence is delicate, conditional, and reversible. The coming days will determine whether it holds or collapses into yet another round of bloodshed. In Washington, archival footage recalls an earlier moment. US President Donald Trump sitting beside Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the Oval Office, 2 leaders who forged a pragmatic partnership that shaped this peace plan's foundation. Their upcoming meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh will mark the first joint chairmanship of the post-war process. For both men, the summit represents validation. For Sisi, the return of Egypt's regional influence. For Trump, the embodiment of what he calls peace through strength. From Paris, President Emmanuel Macron strikes a moral tone. The law was enacted 44 years ago, he declared, but this fight is not over. We will continue until its universal abolition. His words, though delivered in another context, echo France's insistence that the pursuit of peace is inseparable from the defense of human rights. Macron has confirmed his travel to Egypt, promising that Europe will play an active role in Gaza's reconstruction. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez voices similar resolve. The Spanish government demands compliance with international law, he says, announcing that a maritime vessel will depart from Cartagena to assist if humanitarian operations require it. His statement highlights how the Gaza ceasefire has become a European concern, not only a Middle Eastern one. In Rome, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni prepares for her own journey to Egypt, aligning with France and Spain in what European diplomats describe as a southern coalition for humanitarian stability. Together, these leaders form the western flank of the Sharm el-Sheikh initiative, a rare convergence of political will around a single fragile goal. On the ground in Gaza, American envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner walk through the devastated landscape. Their convoy moves through streets lined with crumbled concrete, twisted metal, and silence. This is the Gaza Strip on the second day of ceasefire, a territory breathing for the first time in 2 years. Admiral Brad Cooper, head of US Naval Forces Central Command, joins the visit. He announces plans for a civil-military coordination center to support stabilization, but stresses firmly that no US troops will enter Palestinian territory. It is diplomacy through logistics, engagement without occupation. For the families of the hostages, the visit carries deep symbolism. In Tel Aviv, the Hostages and Missing Families Forum gathers to address reporters. They have lived months of anguish and uncertainty. Among them stands Zahiro Shahar Moore, niece of Avraham Munda, whose body was discovered in a Hamas tunnel. With tears in her eyes, she says, "We finally feel hope, but we cannot and will not stop now. Every hostage must come home, the living and the dead. Every family deserves closure." Her voice trembles, but her message is resolute. For her, the ceasefire is not a diplomatic text. It is a personal plea written in grief. American envoy Steve Witkoff responds with empathy. "Your courage has moved this world," he tells the families. "You prayed tirelessly and never let the world forget who your loved ones are. In this way, you honor and bless them. In that moment, the political map fades away, leaving only human faces and the simple hope of reunion." Meanwhile, across the West Bank, Israel's prison service begins a highly coordinated operation. Convoys of armored vehicles move through the darkness near Ofer prison. Under the ceasefire terms, Israel must release 250 Palestinian prisoners, some serving life sentences, in exchange for hostages still held in Gaza. At least 48 Israelis remain unaccounted for, some believed alive, others confirmed dead. The trade, delicate and controversial, unfolds under the scrutiny of both governments and grieving families. Another 1,700 Palestinians detained during military operations since October 7, 2023, are also slated for release. It is the largest exchange since the Gilad Shalit deal more than a decade ago, and perhaps the most politically explosive. Inside Israel, critics accuse Netanyahu's government of capitulation. Supporters call it a moral necessity. Far from the headlines, the Israeli Defense Forces release footage of past raids. Soldiers moving through darkened ruins, explosions flashing across the night. The images serve as a reminder of what the ceasefire seeks to prevent: another descent into carnage. For Gaza's exhausted residents, the quiet that follows is not peace, but survival. Diplomatic sources confirm that preparations for the Sharm el-Sheikh summit are accelerating. The agenda is ambitious and complex, verifying ceasefire compliance, coordinating humanitarian corridors, and outlining the framework for Gaza's reconstruction. US and Egyptian officials hope to unveil a timeline for international observers to monitor border crossings, while European Union representatives prepare to propose a $6 billion aid package for rebuilding housing, schools, and hospitals. For Washington, this summit carries global stakes. It is the first tangible test of the Trump Peace Plan 2.0, a revision of his earlier Middle East framework, this time centered on phased de-escalation and controlled reconstruction. Trump's aides frame it as proof that American pressure can produce peace. His critics call it a fragile ceasefire dressed in political theater. Both sides agree on one point: its outcome will shape the region's future. Egypt, hosting the summit, sees the opportunity as a reaffirmation of its diplomatic legacy. President Sisi's advisors speak of a new Camp David moment, hoping that Cairo's role as mediator will secure regional stability and Western investment. Egyptian media portrays Sharm el-Sheikh as the capital of crisis diplomacy, where African, Arab, and Western interests converge under the same desert sun. For Europe, participation is driven by both principle and pragmatism. Macron seeks to reinforce France's moral voice. Sanchez positions Spain as a humanitarian bridge. Meloni argues that Mediterranean stability directly affects European security. In Brussels, officials warn that without coordinated aid, Gaza's collapse could trigger another wave of migration towards southern Europe. Inside the United Nations, planners work quietly to reactivate relief convoys. Nearly 90% of Gaza's population is displaced, surviving on minimal aid. Hospitals function with skeleton staff and intermittent electricity. UN officials describe the situation as one power outage away from catastrophe. Their message to world leaders: reconstruction must begin immediately, or the ceasefire will crumble. But beyond humanitarian logistics lies a deeper question: who will govern Gaza once the guns fall silent? The ceasefire text leaves that answer deliberately vague. Israel demands full disarmament of Hamas. Hamas rejects any framework that excludes it from Gaza's administration. Egypt and Qatar propose a transitional authority combining technocrats and representatives from multiple Palestinian factions. The US favors a model led by the Palestinian Authority under strict international oversight. None of these plans has yet won consensus. As one senior diplomat confides to AFP, Phase 1 is about stopping the guns. Phase 2 is about rebuilding trust. And that is far harder. In Israel, political divisions deepen. Prime Minister Netanyahu faces backlash from ultranationalist allies who oppose concessions to Hamas. Yet the public mood leans toward pragmatism. Opinion polls show a majority supporting prisoner exchanges and reconstruction aid, provided the hostages return safely. Netanyahu's televised remarks are brief but pointed. With the approval of the first phase of the plan, all our hostages will be brought home. In Gaza's refugee camps, families wait outside makeshift offices to register missing relatives. Some have not heard from sons or brothers since early 2024. For them, the ceasefire is both salvation and torment, a promise of relief mixed with the dread of betrayal. A young father tells reporters, "I don't trust anyone anymore, but I will wait." Because waiting is all we have left back in Tel Aviv, Witkoff and Kushner continue their diplomacy, shuttling between Israeli and Egyptian officials. Sources say they are drafting the framework for a Gaza stabilization mechanism, a joint body to oversee aid distribution and security coordination. The proposal draws comparisons to the 1990s Oil for Food program, though US officials insist it will be transparent and corruption-proof. Regional analysts caution that without Palestinian unity, even the best-designed mechanism could collapse under factional rivalries. Egyptian negotiators, seasoned by decades of ceasefire mediation, offer a sober warning. You can rebuild walls, but not trust. The phrase circulates through press rooms and think tank briefings, a reminder that peace plans succeed only when rooted in reconciliation. Along the Red Sea coast, Sharm el-Sheikh itself transforms into a fortress. Hotels once filled with tourists are converted into conference halls and command centres. Armoured vehicles guard intersections. Helicopters patrol the shoreline. Inside the international media zone, engineers test satellite uplinks while reporters rehearse live feeds. Every lens points toward the summit hall, waiting for the moment when leaders will walk in. Local residents, accustomed to high-profile events, speak with a mix of pride and fatigue. Maybe this time, says a hotel clerk, the leaders will bring something that lasts. The sentiment captures Egypt's cautious optimism and the region's collective exhaustion. Night falls over the Sinai. The Red Sea shimmers under distant lights, and the flags raised in the morning still flutter against the wind. They are emblems of an extraordinary effort to halt history's repetition, fragile cloths holding the weight of impossible expectations. In a nearby compound, aides finalize talking points. Each delegation carries its own priorities. The US seeks security guarantees. Egypt wants economic commitments. Europe focuses on humanitarian corridors. And the Palestinians simply want to live without fear. The success of the summit depends on aligning these competing visions into a single coherent path. Observers note that despite skepticism, something tangible has shifted. The region's adversaries are talking again, face to face. After years of total warfare, dialogue itself is a victory, however small. As dawn approaches, journalists gather outside the venue. The air is thick with anticipation. Some call this the first day of Gaza's future. Others warn it may be the last day before another war. But for now, as world leaders converge on the Egyptian coast, one truth prevails. Peace remains possible, if only for a moment, if only through immense effort. The world has seen ceasefires come and go, promises made and broken. Yet even the most fragile peace begins with one act of cooperation. For those who lost loved ones and for those who risk political careers to end this conflict, the Sharm el-Sheikh summit is more than diplomacy. It is a plea for endurance, compassion, and memory. The cameras will soon roll. The speeches will echo across the hall. Outside, the desert wind carries a quieter sound, the sigh of a region that has fought too long and yearns for stillness. And so the story returns to where it began, the flags rising above the Red Sea. They flutter not in triumph, but in fragile continuity, reminders that even after endless wars, the world can still choose dialogue over destruction.